California, and is supported by Kronos, offering cloud-based workforce management solutions to help organizations of all types and sizes achieve their strategic goals. More at Kronos.com. Kronos, workforce innovation that works.
From 8 p.m. in New York, good morning. I'm Mark Garrison in for David Brancaccio with a look at business and economics as Wall Street starts its day. Before we do the numbers, let's talk live with Chris Lowe, Chief Economist at FTN Financial, to get some context. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Mark.
So we both made it into work today here in snowy New York, but the weather in the Northeast and down south it's going to have a real impact on the economy. What are you expecting to see?
Well, that's right. You know, there's no question retailers have felt it, particularly auto dealers. Nobody likes to buy a car when the weather's like this. What typically happens is as soon as it thaws, when it warms up, the economy comes back. The question is, does that happen before or after the end of the first quarter? It'll have a big, that makes a big difference to growth.
Investors watching weather too. Now, this happens to be the time that the Labor Department gathers the data for the employment survey, and many part-time workers, construction workers, lots of people that are not on the job this week because of the weather. So when the job numbers come out next month, what does the Fed do with them?
Well, that's right. You know, it's going to be 3 months in a row where the numbers are really weak. At least 2 of those months were weather affected. You know, the Fed ignores them. But the problem is, how do you make a decision when you can't really see what's going on? And there has to be at least some nervousness at the Fed that the economy could be doing something, maybe even accelerating underneath all this noise.
Okay, we'll watch it and see what happens. And we did see at least some companies that are benefiting. We saw the Campbell's profit report. People are definitely buying a lot of soup in the winter weather. So there's some companies that are doing okay in the winter weather. Chris Lowe at FTN Financial, thanks very much.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, let's do the numbers. Stocks are down a bit on Wall Street. The S&P is almost down 0.1% at 1828. The Dow is down just a bit at 16,020. The Nasdaq is down about 0.25% at 4230. In Europe, stocks have been up mostly on strong growth numbers data. News this morning that menswear retailer Joseph A. Bank will acquire Eddie Bauer. It's not a huge deal dollar-wise at $825 million. That is tip compared to the $45 billion Comcast Time Warner cable deal. But this one is an unusual deal. So we brought in Harvard Law and Business Professor Guhan Subramanian to help explain. Good morning, Guhan.
Good morning.
So I'll try and summarize this because it gets a little complicated. But basically, last year, Joseph A. Bank tried to buy Men's Warehouse. Then Men's Warehouse said, no, we will buy you. Now Joseph A. Bank is buying Eddie Bauer in large part to make it harder for Men's Warehouse to buy Joseph A. Bank. I know it's complicated, but just talk about the strategy behind this latest move by Joseph A. Bank to buy Eddie Bauer.
Well, it's a move that target companies use on occasion. It's called bulking up, where the target company, in this case, Joseph A. Bank, tries to make itself bigger. And by doing so, they make it harder for Men's Warehouse to acquire either Joseph A. Bank by itself or along with Eddie Bauer as well.
And so talk about other times when this has come up and how that's turned out as far as other big deals where one of the companies has made this move.
Yeah, it doesn't happen that often, but it happens on occasion. So, for example, a few years ago, Oracle was making a hostile bid for PeopleSoft, and PeopleSoft decided to buy J.D. Edwards as a way of bulking up. And many commentators at the time thought that Oracle might go away because PeopleSoft was making itself so much bigger, but in fact, Oracle and Larry Ellison said, no, we're going to buy the whole thing, and that's what they ended up doing in the end.
So as we said, as takeovers go, this is not a large deal, but it's quite interesting just in the sense that we haven't seen these kind of stories pop up very often, really since the 80s when there was so much merger and acquisition activity. Why is this such an interesting story?
Well, you're right to say that the size of the deal isn't enormous, but the chess game is really quite interesting, and things like the initial Joseph A. Bank bid for Men's Warehouse, and the back and forth is called Pac-Man defense, and the terms are kind of fun, but they're not seen that often. So I think you're right that the strategy here is quite interesting, and it's certainly a case I'll be teaching my corporate law students this spring.
Okay, well, a lot of interesting stuff for you and your students to chew over. Guhan Subramanian, thank you so much.
Sure thing.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Invest Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland, a European location with a young, well-educated, agile workforce at the ready. More at investni.com/invest. By Vanderbilt University Medical Center, the promise of discovery, using a patient's DNA to tailor transplant care at vanderbilthealth.com. And by Citrix, with GoToMeeting, connecting people in face-to-face online meetings so they can collaborate from anywhere. More at GoToMeeting.com.
The White House is providing up to $100 million in disaster assistance for California ranchers who are struggling with widespread drought there, along with several other aid moves. President Obama is in Fresno, California today to roll out the aid package. Marketplace's David Weinberg takes a look at what exactly the president can do in a situation like this.
If the federal government really wanted to solve the drought problem, they would just make it rain. The federal government can't make it rain, but they can make it rain money, and that is helpful. Dr. Jeffrey Mount is a senior fellow at the Public Policy Institute of California. He says federal money could be given to farm laborers who are out of work because of the drought and to farmers to help cover crop loss. But that doesn't solve the problem of the lack of water. Not to disappoint, but it's mostly small ball stuff that the federal government can do. Frankly, there's just not enough water to go around no matter what. What the federal government can do to increase the water supply is invest in technology that captures wastewater and stormwater.
We don't capture it, we don't use it, and there's a huge opportunity, billions of gallons in every rainstorm.
Steve Fleishley is Water Program Director of the National Resources Defense Council. He says one more thing the feds could do is tell states if they want to receive drought relief funds from FEMA, they'll have to create policies that encourage more efficient water use. I'm David Weinberg for Marketplace. And finally, if you're not a fan of Valentine's Day, you can always watch relationships based on power, hunger, and lies. The latest season of the Netflix series House of Cards is finally out. The political drama has some high-profile fans. President Obama's official Twitter account begs, no spoilers, please. In New York, I'm Mark Garrison. This is the Marketplace Morning Report. This is 8 p.m. American Public Media.
Support for NPR comes from NPR member stations and from Cleveland Clinic, where more than 1 million same-day appointments have been scheduled. More at clevelandclinic.org. From Angie's List, providing reviews of local roofers, painters, landscapers, and plumbers to keep the consumer informed. More at angieslist.com. From Blinds.com, with the Window Shopper mobile app that lets customers use augmented reality to shop for window coverings. Available at Blinds.com. And from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Good morning. You're listening to Morning Edition on KJZZ. I'm Dennis Lambert. We'll get up to 85 today. It's 56 degrees right now.
Why do we fall in love? Why does love feel so good and hurt so much? I'm Dean Olsher. Join me for What Is This Thing Called Love? It's part of a new series called The Really Big Question.
This special program for Valentine's Day is tonight at 7 on KJZZ.
KJZZ is supported by Victory at Verado, serving up a new way to live for people over 55. New home styles and miles of scenic trails. The whole story is at Verado.com. Victory will be yours in 2015.
KJZZ's Group 915 presents What I Wish I Knew About Getting Out of Debt, a panel discussion on financial literacy and education. Thursday, February 20th at Rio Salado College. For more information, visit www.kjzz.org.
This is listener-supported KJZZ FM Phoenix and HD. It's 8 o'clock.
Good morning. President Obama is about to announce emergency drought relief measures here in California. Scott Horsley reports in this hour of Morning Edition from NPR News.
In Phoenix News at 8:06, a bill moving through the state legislature would help county attorneys prosecute those who assist in a suicide.
The help for California includes up to $100 million in disaster assistance for farmers with livestock. I'm Renee Montaigne.
And I'm Steve Inskeep. A great Russian skater suffered disaster at the Olympics. Our colleague Sonari Clinton is watching the skaters who remain. Also this hour, a Virginia judge strikes down the state's gay marriage ban. We'll hear from the state attorney general, Mark Herring. And the Mississippi River is making a sound you have to hear to believe. It's Friday, February 14th, Valentine's Day, and the birthday of former New York Mayor Mike Bloomberg, who is 72. Here's the news.
From NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. The National Weather Service has put the Northeast under winter storm warning as heavy wet snow falls on the region. This is from the same winter storm that pummeled the Mid-Atlantic yesterday and the South earlier this week. Skies are finally clearing. That's good news for air travelers. But as NPR's Mark Memmott reports, it'll be a few days before airlines can get everyone to their destinations.
The numbers tell the story of the havoc the storm caused. 14,000 flights were canceled this week from on Thursday alone. Another 29,000 flights were delayed, 4,500 of them on Thursday. Things are starting to get better as the weather improves. About 1,200 flights have already been canceled for today, but that's a quarter of Thursday's total. Still, analysts caution that it may be Sunday or Monday before everything's sorted out and everyone's where they want to be. Mark Memmott, NPR News.
Meanwhile, driving continues to be treacherous. Media reports from Pennsylvania say there's been a massive pileup on the Pennsylvania Turnpike just north of Philadelphia. Dozens of cars are involved and traffic is moving slowly or not at all. Officials with the Pennsylvania Turnpike are advising motorists to take alternate routes. There's no word of injuries. A federal judge has overturned Virginia's ban of same-sex marriage. The judge ruled the plaintiffs faced discriminatory treatment because of the law and declared it unconstitutional. Virginia's newly elected Attorney General, Mark Herring, told NPR's Morning Edition the decision is bringing same-sex couples closer to equality.
The judge recognized that the legal landscape on this issue has been moving and that ultimately the courts, presumably the Supreme Court, will need to make a definitive ruling, and that this was an important step toward that.
The judge put a stay on her ruling so opponents of her decision can appeal, but groups opposed to same-sex marriage have vowed to do so. Russia is banning the adoption of children by some citizens of countries that allow same-sex marriage. NPR's Corey Flintoff reports the move is in addition to the law that bans Americans from adopting Russian children.
Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev signed a decree adding a new provision to the law. It says that married heterosexuals may adopt Russian children even if they live in a country that permits same-sex marriage. Single people from those countries may not adopt Russian orphans, nor can people in same-sex marriages. Russia's Orthodox Church and its ruling political party have taken strong stands against homosexual rights, including a law that bans giving information about same-sex issues to people under the age of 18. The law became a major issue before the Winter Olympics. Corey Flintoff, NPR News, Sochi.
On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 4 points at 16,032. The Nasdaq is down 8. This is NPR. In a recent study of wireless communications at airports, a Canadian government watchdog has cleared that country's electronic spy agency of invading the online activities of Canadians. Dan Karpenchuk reports the actions were not about mass surveillance or tracking.
A Quebec judge who leads the independent watchdog says his office questioned employees of Communications Security Establishment Canada and looked into the controversial activity. It concluded that CSEC's actions were an effort to understand global communication networks and was not directed at Canadians or people in Canada. CSEC has said it was merely collecting electronic metadata, information trails about messages, and not the actual content of the messages or calls, to help determine the communications pattern in a public location. CSEC monitors phone, computer, satellite, radio, and telephone traffic of people, countries, organizations, and terror groups, but it is forbidden from targeting private communications of Canadians. For NPR News, I'm Dan Karpenchuk in Toronto.
Authorities in Indonesia say 3 people have been killed in a volcanic eruption on the island of Java. Several airports have been closed, and nearly 80,000 people have been evacuated. The sound of the volcano could be heard by witnesses more than 100 miles away. Ash and grit are falling to the ground across the island, including in some of Java's largest cities. Video footage shows houses, streets, and cars blanketed in thick layers of ash. The government of Nepal is cutting fees for climbers who want to ascend Mount Everest. Officials say this will promote safety, since more people will climb Everest individually instead of in large groups to get a financial discount. I'm Corva Coleman, NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from Novo Nordisk, committed to diabetes care and changing lives for more than 90 years. NovoNordisk-US.com.
From KJZZ News in Phoenix, I'm Dennis Lang. The State House Committee has approved a bill that aims to help county attorneys prosecute people who assist with suicide. The measure defines assisting in suicide as offering a provider with physical means used to commit suicide, like a gun. Two of the four members of the Georgia bench rightly died while finding an exit for a good manslaughter charges in 2011. Some chance is better than none. That's the theory behind the House Committee's vote Thursday to allow terminally ill patients to get drugs that have yet to be approved for use. Leading after testimony from Stephen Walker had canceled Governor's wife over a decade ago. Walker says she was denied access to drugs since the administration.
We knew they were. The FDA probably knew they were more focused on that process than they were on
the measure drew objections from some lawmakers who say the unproven drugs just get patients into one's home. But Representative Kelly Townsend says that misses the point.
The person has no other hope. And so I think they should have that ability to make that decision on their own, to go ahead and make that last-ditch effort. That's their human right to do that.
Under the bill, voters would have the final say on the idea in November. The East Coast is still digging out from a massive winter storm. In Phoenix, forecasters are calling for near-record heat through the weekend. KJZZ's Peter O'Dowd report temperatures will approach 90 degrees tomorrow.
That's remarkable this time of year, even for Arizona. Forecasters predict Phoenix temperatures will be more than 15 degrees above normal. The National Weather Service's Austin Jameson says it's no surprise when a big storm moves one way, it tends to leave the opposite weather behind it.
There's oftentimes a dichotomy like that in the wintertime. The western parts of the country can be quite warm, and then in the east it's quite cold.
Jameson says this heat wave may pose a danger to people who are visiting Arizona from the frigid East Coast. People who aren't used to dry heat in February can get sick if they exert themselves outside. Peter O'Dowd, KJZZ News, Phoenix.
Well, if you're flying east this morning, you may want to check with your airline. There were some flight cancellations Thursday because of the storm that has hit the East Coast. Most of the canceled flights were to Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, and Newark. But Sky Harbor spokeswoman Julie Rodriguez says so far there are not any reports of people being stranded in Phoenix.
The airlines are very good about notifying passengers before they come to the airport, so we don't have people waiting around here or showing up and finding out that their flight has been canceled.
Arizona-based U.S. Airways canceled 655 flights nationwide Thursday, about a dozen of those in Sky Harbor. If you have an eastbound flight from Phoenix, check your email or social media networks for updates on flight information from your airline. And if you're headed to Las Vegas for the President's Day weekend, you best keep an eye on the speedometer. The Department of Public Safety says it'll use a single-engine plane to spot speeders on US 93. Highway Patrol says previous airborne enforcement effort found the average speed on US 93 was 86 miles an hour. The speed limit is 65.
KJZZ is supported by Mayo Clinic, where teams of experts work together to focus on you. Learn which health plans include Mayo Clinic, or you can request an appointment at mayoclinic.org/Arizona.
Checking traffic on I-10 eastbound, expect delays around the tunnel. A crash is blocking the HOV and left lanes. We're looking for mostly sunny skies and a high today up 85, tying the record last read to 1957. For tomorrow, highs of around 87, and Sunday and Monday it should be 85 or 86. It's mostly sunny right now, 57 degrees at 8:10.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Renee Montaigne.
And I'm Steve Inskeep. Much of the eastern part of the country is digging out from fresh layers of snow and slush. Much of the western part of the country is not.
Snowpack in the Sierra Nevada mountains is less than 30% of what it should be this year. That means farmers and ranchers will have to get by with much less water than they'd like come this spring.
We've heard a lot in this program about the California drought, and today we can say the Obama administration is promising aid. President Obama will make that announcement on a visit to California's Central Valley. NPR's Scott Horsley reports.
What California needs more than anything is a whole lot of snow and rain. President Obama can't deliver that. But Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack says the president's visit to Fresno will help focus the government's attention on the historic drought that threatens to turn part of California, known as the nation's fruit basket, into a latter-day dust bowl.
I think the president wants to reassure people in California, and particularly the producers of California, that we are paying attention, that we're here to help.
The president is set to announce several emergency relief measures, including up to $100 million in livestock disaster assistance. Vilsack says that will help ranchers and dairy farmers whose grazing areas have dried up.
Sign-up would begin in April, and shortly thereafter, producers would be receiving checks that would provide them help and assistance to get through a difficult time.
Audrey Betancourt is facing her own difficulties. Ordinarily, she grows alfalfa for dairy cows and cotton on about 700 acres in Kings County, California, but this year she's letting 500 acres go fallow. She and other farmers have been warned to expect no irrigation deliveries from state or federal canals this year. So Betancourt is rationing her limited supply of groundwater in hopes of salvaging her valuable almond and walnut trees.
Some of our neighbors who only grow permanent crops are literally having to choose which trees to pull out of the ground because they don't have enough water to keep all of them alive.
And that has ripple effects throughout the local economy. Betancourt has already cut her workforce by more than 25%.
We have no water to put the ground into production, ergo we have no crops to plant, ergo we have no work for people to do.
That means some of the people who normally harvest produce that's sold across the country will have trouble this year feeding their own families. Obama will announce $60 million in federal help for California's food banks. The government is also planning to open hundreds of centers to serve meals to hungry children throughout the summer. Even as the stubborn drought turns pasture land in the valley brown, some lawmakers see an opportunity to make political hay. House Republicans have taken to calling this a man-made drought, and last week they passed a bill, sponsored by Central Valley Congressman David Valadao, that would temporarily lift environmental limits, including the Endangered Species Act, so more water could be pumped for irrigation.
Families, farmers, this water should have been going to you to grow crops, to feed families. We had a lot of water. We lost it all. It was dumped out into the ocean in the name of a fish.
The Obama administration has threatened to veto the GOP bill, saying it would jeopardize a decades-long effort to rebalance the way California divvies up its scarce water supply. This year, that supply is especially tight, and Secretary Vilsack says no amount of legislative maneuvering can change that.
I wish this were something as easy as somebody being able to turn on a faucet or a spigot and letting the water flow, but the reality is you can turn it on and there just isn't anything to come out of that spigot.
In addition to coping with the drought's immediate effects, the administration is also setting up research centers in Davis, California, and elsewhere around the country to look for ways to adapt to extreme weather. Vilsack says that's the smart thing to do in case this year's drought in California is just the latest sign of a more lasting change in the climate. Scott Horsley, NPR News, the White House.
Let's go now to St. Paul.
Javier Fernandez from Spain. Any American with a chance? Jason Brown has a chance. Jeremy Abbott is in 15th, and you can't see him getting to the top. He had this disastrous program during the team event, and he also fell so hard during the short program that the beat reporter who was sitting next to me said it was one of the worst falls he had ever seen. He laid on the ground for what seemed like an eternity. It was probably only like 4 or 5 seconds. Jason Brown, though, is between 3rd place and 6th place. There's a 1-point difference. So he's in striking distance. He doesn't have a quad, which is one of these, huge jumps, partly because of his youth, but he does have a boatload of charisma and crowd appeal. And I think that whether or not he gets a medal, he'll definitely put on a show.
Sonari, can I just ask, I've only ever seen these figure skaters on television, sitting with my daughter or whatever, and it is incredible to see them on television, the athleticism, the balance, the G-forces, it would seem sometimes. I'm wondering, since you're there watching them in person, what's it like to be there? What's it like to be looking down on the ice when they're doing it?
Well, it's not like figure skaters are all selected all because of their athleticism. It's like, who's the best person who is exposed to the sport. You can see the really great athletes like Jason Brown, who sort of defies gravity sometimes. And you can see it even when you're up in the balcony, how hard they come down and how lively they jump. I mean, it's really an amazing thing when you can see from yards away the water and the ice shoot up from the ground. I really have never seen anything quite like it.
Sonari, thanks very much.
Thank you.
That's NPR's Sonari Clinton. He's in Sochi.
It's 8:19 and you're listening to Morning Edition. I'm Dennis Lambert. Look for a high of 85. We'll have mostly sunny skies today. It's mostly sunny right now at 57. Checking traffic on I-10 eastbound heading into the tunnel. The HOV and left lanes are blocked by crash. Expect delays in that area. On the 101 northbound in the East Valley at McKellips, the crash is blocking the left lane. When it comes to living space, bigger may not always be better, and the new art exhibit bears that out.
There's a little office nook over here to the south, a loft with a bed above, and then a bookshelf that doubles as a ladder to the loft.
The antidote to a McMansion is at 8:35 on Morning Edition. In KJZZ News, voters in Arizona and the Rocky Mountain West want their public lands protected and say the positions of candidates on conservation and land use could decide who gets their vote in the November elections. Voters in Arizona are concerned about pollution of the state's rivers, lakes, and streams. Arizona Wilderness Coalition Director Barbara Hawk says 72% of the voters in the state say they'd be more likely to support a candidate who favors increased use of renewable energy like wind and solar.
Arizonans, like the country, are recognizing that we need to plan for our nation's energy future, and planning for appropriate siting of renewables is a great way to add to that mix.
The Colorado College poll of 2,400 registered voters found 84% approved the National Park Service, 73% support for the U.S. Forest Service, and 69% for the Fish and Wildlife Service.
KJZZ is supported by the Arizona Smokers Helpline. Tobacco cessation programs are a health benefit that employers can provide to help their employees quit tobacco. More about how to help your employees at ashline.org.
I'm Peter Sagal. Because we're not TV, you will not see my terrible eye infections. Take that, Costas. Join us for the news quiz from NPR.
Wait was recorded live last night right here in Phoenix, and you can hear that show tomorrow morning at 11 on KJZZ. This is Morning Edition. It's 8:21.
For the past few weeks, Code Switch, our team covering race, ethnicity, and culture in America, has been hosting a conversation online about romance. As part of the project, NPR's Shireen Marisol Meraji brings us this story just in time for Valentine's Day about popular songs focusing on interracial attraction.
The first thing that jumped to my mind when we decided to do this cross-cultural romance series was music. So I took to Facebook and Twitter and asked for song submissions. And you sent songs about love across borders, racial lines, songs with a socially conscious message, songs that fetishize women of color, and songs about racial harmony that were, well,
Trite as can possibly be. She's got jungle fever, he's got jungle fever, she's gone white boy crazy, but I mean, it's really not very, it's not very sophisticated.